welcome to Me Woosh. Thanks for tuning in. We are going to talk today about this thing. So this is a rental guitar. Here's my story. Playing in a week tomorrow, and I'm also trying to build a guitar for the show. It's going to be like one of those stripey EVH art things. Video is coming. Watch this space. And it's going to be cool. Got some nice parts for it. Wilkinson bridge, and I got another Wilkinson just because this stuff's cheap. Humbucker. Couple of problems. It's a 2-wire. I was absolutely certain when I was ordering that it was 4, and then I got the thing and I tested it, and I didn't actually check that it was 4-wire. I don't know how I missed that, because I was going to have this guy operating as a that's going to be humbucker, that was going to be split, and that was going to be with a with a resistor, so that it was going to do like a full tone roll off. Kind of a neat idea. Anyway, now it's basically going to be humbucker off, tone roll off. So we'll see. Anyway, I wanted to get used to playing with a trem bridge again. I had one. Actually, the icon for my channel is a guitar that I had. A nice guitar, but it was a really short scale, 24 inches. And it just made the strings really floppy. But I really liked the vintage, even the vintage tremolo bridge on it. The 6-screw tremolo was great. It didn't have tuning issues at all. Now, there's a few things you can do to prevent tuning issues. One of them is putting, actually what I use is pencil lead. So you just rub graphite, pencil on a paper long enough till you get like a powder, and then mix that with just a tiny bit of petroleum jelly, Vaseline, and then you've got something that's a bit sticky, and you can just use it like a toothpick to brush the tiniest little bit into this groove, and it works like a charm. So the tuners were standard. It was those Clues-on style tuners, the same ones I got on this guitar here, which are great. I love those tuners. They're wonderful. So anyway, I needed a trem guitar for the meantime to get used to, and I wanted it to be a Fender because the neck that I'm putting on my new guitar is a Fender. So it has to feel the same. So I thought, okay, well, what I'll do is just go rent one from Long and McQuade if you know the store. So I rented this. Now, the Mexi-Strat is supposed to be sort of the second tier best quality. You've got, well, not counting custom shop, but you've got your American standard, and then Mexicans under that, supposed to be, and then the overseas stuff is supposed to be below that. I commented in an earlier video that the Mexican Strats and the American Strats were actually rivaled by the stuff coming out of Japan in the 80s, and Fender stopped using factories in Japan to make their guitars because it was undercutting their market, right? So that's a Japanese Fender. This is a Fender Pawn Shop 51. Beautiful guitar. The electronics in it are fantastic. Absolutely satisfied with that guitar. It was a great purchase. I think they still sell for like about $850. So, good guitar, decent money to spend. These are about the same, maybe $750. This is a standard, just your standard Strat. This is supposed to be like second tier quality, but technically low-end Fender. And if you want to go cheaper and overseas, then you get a Fender Squier. And it has been argued that the Fender Squiers are even better than Fenders, but they're not Fenders, and that's the key. So you're not buying a Fender, you're buying a Fender Squier, but are you buying a better guitar? Well, it depends on several factors, electronics being some. So the sort of top-end, most expensive Squiers are coming in at about $500. And, the low-end Squier is like the Squier Affinity Bullet. Crap. Bullet, sadly, is a proud name, or at least was. I had one when I was like 1985. Wonderful. Great guitar. And I kicked myself for selling it because I sold it to my buddy. He still plays it. So it kind of rubs it in my face. But anyway, so what you're expecting from this is good quality. You expect this to be better than a Squier. So here's a couple of comments. Here's what I have to say about the Fender Mexi brand. I love the finish on the neck. Satin on the back. It's very glossy up front here, but just the finish and the detail on the neck is beautiful. Few complaints about fret ends, particularly 6 through 9. They're a bit barbed. If I scratch my thumb on them like this, I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not. See those scratches on my thumb? That's just from rubbing them on these guys. If this was my guitar, I'd get a file out and smooth those down. This is a good feeling switch. Very solid. I like that. That's the pickup selector switch. Very good quality. The pots, not so much. They're very kind of like draggy and, you know, I'm not super impressed with those. The vintage 6-screw tremolos always had this kind of lousiness to them with, they screw in and then they're always wobbly. The way that the American Strats got around that, I don't know why they don't just do this for all of them, but they give you a spring. So if you go to the store and you look at a Strat, you're going to see a little sticker over the hole. And you might wonder, what's that all about? Well, there's a spring in there. And that's to keep the spring from falling out or keep people from stealing it. So you can just get these springs. They're cheap, but they're super, super hard. You can't even press them in your fingers. They're super hard. You pass that down into the hole, thread the arm in, and then once you make contact, the more you thread down, the tighter it's going to be. And, you know, more solid and whatever. I fixed the problem by putting a little bit of masking tape around it. Just enough so it's not going to get all mucked up and screwy in there. It's not on the threads, it's just on the shaft above it. And it keeps it, for better for worse, where I put it. So I can, you know, use the thing if I'm going to. And it stays where I put it. Should hold that up so you can see. Tremolo is not really my thing, but we're doing 80s music, so I needed to have some dive bomby stuff just for fun. And here's another thing. I've never owned a Strat before. I didn't realize this, but I guess I've never actually owned a proper Fender Strat, or even, I guess in my day, when I was, you know, buying guitars and not making them for myself, I was always getting something like this, which doesn't have a volume knob right next to the bridge pickup width. Strats have that. So that is really in the way. I find if I'm trying to do palm muting on the top 2 strings, I have to wrap my finger around the volume knob. And when I'm strumming, particularly if I'm muting, which I do here, I'm bumping this volume knob. So this is, I don't know, this is an $850 guitar, and frankly, for the money, that's a better purchase. For $800 and something, I would get an overseas one before I'd get another one of these Mexican ones. The electronics are poor, in my opinion. It is what it is. So if you want to have something that's a nice guitar and it says Fender on it, I don't think I'd buy a Mexican one. I'd buy an American one if I had to have the word Fender on it. If I don't care about the word Fender, then I'll just go for a Squier. Now, I do like the finish on this neck. It's beautifully finished, but look at that string tree. I have never seen it clamped flat against the deck before like that. And you can tell it's not actually in the right spot. It's slightly to the left of where it should be. So it's pulling the strings, both of them, to the left, and then they go back as they head over to the tuners. I've never seen that. Even on a Squier, I've never seen that. It's weird. One or two of these tuners is also a bit, it's got a bit of slack in it. And I think for modern tuners, I like to, you know, if I need it to go flat, I just turn it a little bit and I leave it, and it should stay where I put it. The vintage style tuners, which is what I have on this guitar, you have to go way flat and then come back up to tune it. Now, they'll stay where you put them, but you can't just back them off a bit. You have to go way down and then come up. which is, I guess, normal. It's certainly vintage. That's just the way they built them, you know, back in the day. But anyway, so yeah. One more thing about bridges. So this is set up floating, and I've got it. There's not a lot of room to go up, but I like having a little tiny bit for one reason, and that is when you're doing some kind of a dive bomb, you know. That's still in tune. Let's check. Doesn't really sound good, but if you give it a yank, that sounds great. Well, the low E doesn't. Anyway, I'd spend more time, you know, finding friction points, maybe sanding. Just put a bit of sandpaper in here, try and smooth that out a tiny bit. The big problem with a floating bridge, as I say, I like to have it able to go sharp so that when I'm done doing I just give it a yank, and that seems to square it up. And then all the strings are back in tune and you're doing great. The problem with a floating bridge is if you don't block the bridge, or it's like super tighten the screws so that the thing can't go flat on you by bending strings, then when you try and do this maneuver here, that didn't sound right. So this should be, but that's flat. That there. But if I just fret the note, it's, and that's because when I'm bending a note, the bridge moves. You can see it moving. I'll just hold it up like this, and I'll bend a note. It's too hard to hold it steady, but I'll give you a listen. So I'll bend a note and pluck a different note. Let's do that way. Hear it going down? It shouldn't go down. So if you're playing on a fixed bridge guitar, it stays where it is, and then you can do. But it just sounds off. This bit, I'm bending it farther than I usually do, and then that note's flat. And that's just what you get if the bridge is actually floating. So floating's a good thing for certain things, but if you're going to play two notes at once and bend, like double stops, it's going to go flat on you. It's not going to sound right. So you cannot use a floating bridge like this. If you block it, and that is putting a wood block in here between the mass block and the body, this part here, there's a little gap right in there. So you set this up where you like it, you know, with the right bridge angle and bridge height and whatever your preference is, and then you put a wood block into this gap, maybe with some adhesive like carpet tape or something, so it won't fall out. When you bend a note, you don't want the bridge doing this as well, so you tighten these springs here, and you tighten them enough so that under the force that you're adding by bending strings, you're increasing the string tension. You have enough spring tension to compensate for it so that you don't overcome it. Which means that bending down, you can't just like push it down with your finger and get a vibrato effect. You have to actually lean on it a bit, which is good if you want the stability of having double stops that don't make that weird flat goofiness, but you're having to, you know, get a real workout. You can't just sort of real gently operate the thing. Plus, you can't go sharp with it if you like doing that sort of thing. And as I mentioned, I like to just bend it sharp, just give it a little flick, which always seems to compensate for the dive, and it straightens up the tension across the nut, balances it out, and then everything's back in tune again. And I found that as long as you're not doing double stop bends, the floating bridge is the way to go. You lose sustain with that, but you know, if you want sustain, get a fixed bridge. So anyway, I wouldn't pay $850 for this guitar. If you go back to like a 90s Mexican Strat, those are fantastic guitars. These are just sort of Fender's low end, and it's starting to show. Just the way it is. So I'd buy a like proper Fender neck. The finish on this is gorgeous. And if I was going to build myself another guitar, which I'm sure I'll do, maybe I'll do that. So anyway, I hope this is useful information for you. Tune back in for more videos. Subscribe. There's more Me Wish Guitar School stuff coming up, and I'm going to have a video, at least one, or on the this project when I get it done. And we're doing some 80s music, so maybe I'll just record some of the 80s songs and put those up. Why not? For fun. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.